So Tuesday night, I was watching all these videos about Jess Hilarious ranting about the Breakfast Club. It's like, oh my God, what in the world happened? But then imagine my surprise Wednesday when she was on the Breakfast Club talking about it. It's like, oh my God, how did this work? Because listen, man, if this was like, if she was on Steve Harvey's show or D.L. Hughley's show and she made a rant like that, oh man, they would. I think they either would have suspended her or fired her. Listen up. She gone. You think Steve Harvey would have put up with that? No. So Jess is lucky. That's because I think it's more Charlamagne than Envy. I think if it was Envy's show, I think Envy wouldn't have her back on. But Charlamagne, given that he learned at the knee of Wendy Williams that controversy is good for business, and Charlamagne said, "Well, man, this is great for numbers. This is great for views. This is great." So Charlamagne looked at it like, "Nah, this is good." Now, we don't know what's going to happen long term, but for numbers wise, this is good. So Jess Hilarious is lucky that Charlamagne has a PT Barnum type marketing mind where he just says like, "Oh, this is it's bad, but it's good for business, right?" So here's the thing. This actually reminds me of Seinfeld a little bit. Before I get into like them, there was an episode of Seinfeld where George quit working for the Yankees and then he realized he made a mistake. And I think Kramer told him, just go back to work like nothing happened. He did. He showed up back to work and was looking at him, what you doing here? It's like, what do you mean? I think it happened to Larry David. Larry David is the showrunner of Seinfeld. But earlier in his life, he wrote for SNL. He did the same thing. Larry David quit SNL as a writer and then came back the next day like nothing happened. The balls on that dude. But here's the thing, like Jess Hilarious is really, she was serious, right? I feel like Jess Hilarious felt like she wasn't being heard. So when she took over for Angela Yee, I always felt like that was a curious signing by them. Because she's so different from Yee. Yee was very polished, and Yee knew how to fit in with Charlamagne and Envy. Like I'm sure they both got on her nerves from time to time, but she kind of knew how to fit in with that crew, and they had really good rhythm with Yee. And Jess, I think, had a different rhythm. She was a lot more. She was louder. She was bawdy. She was a stand-up comedian, kind of. She's funny at spots. So I figured, well, it's different energy. So it's not like we were replacing Yee. We were replacing her with different energy. And then she got pregnant. It's like, man, you just got that job, but all babies are a blessing. So she went on maternity leave, and then Loren, who was a producer on the show, took over the whole Jess in the Mess segment, and which is basically was the Angela Yee report, basically. And I think they liked Loren. I think the audience liked Loren. I think the thing that Loren brought was the stuff that Yee had. I think for Envy and Charlamagne, they felt the same rhythm they had with Loren that they had with Yee. And I think the audience liked that too. But you still got Jess out here. Like Jess is on maternity leave, and you can't fire her. They got laws against that, even though it does happen. You got laws. You can't fire a woman on maternity leave. And I think they generally do like Jess. But now you got this polished young lady doing Jess Is the Mess, the Jess Is the Mess stuff. And it's like, what do we do? Like we got Jess, we got Loren, and I guess they felt like, well, we could just have them both work together and it'd be fine. But I think this is where the miscommunication problem is. Like Envy told Jess, it's like, hey man, I told you can come to me if there's a problem, blah blah blah. But maybe Jess felt like she couldn't come to, she couldn't talk to Envy, or she felt like maybe she wasn't being heard. She said something in her rant that was interesting to me. She said that the Breakfast Club is ran like a high school, and she repeated that again on the Breakfast Club. And Charlamagne said, yeah, that's about right. And it's like, oh, that's not good. I think the thing that show is missing, because they probably got an executive producer who's kind of like the person that kind of runs everything, even though it's basically Charlamagne and Envy, and really Charlamagne, to be honest. But I think they do probably have an executive producer or a producer that's like the head person of the Breakfast Club. The problem is, I don't think they're a strong executive producer or a producer. For any show, podcast, whatever that's successful, you need a person that's going to play bad cop and therapist and brainstormer. And sometimes it's a hard gig because you're dealing with a lot of person's egos, but you have to be willing to play good cop and bad cop and just hear everybody's gripes. And I feel like if they had a person and a producer, executive producer, that was the point person on the Breakfast Club, yeah, it's Charlamagne and Envy, but I think their job is to make sure the show runs smoothly. And if you had a really good showrunner or a really good executive producer, and Loren was doing a good job while Jess was on maternity leave, a smart leader would say, this might be a problem because Jess is coming back and Loren's doing a good job. And if you're a leader, you're observing how Loren has fit in with Envy and Charlamagne. And it's like, man, like how are we gonna handle this when Jess comes back? So prior to that, you sit down with Loren and work all this stuff out before there's a fire. And let's say they did have a conversation, and it still was problematic because Loren was doing Jess Is the mess, and that was Jess's thing. And I would have said, if I was a showrunner, I would have said, okay, listen, Loren's really good with Jess Is the mess stuff. She's really good at it, right? We all know she's good. She's better than you. Not to say you're not to say you're not great. It's that she's better at it than you. So here's what we're going to do. She'll come in. She's our news person, right? She'll do all the stuff. She'll talk about news. She comes in, talk about news. She'll be in and out from time to time. Jess, you are our main person when a guest comes in. We'll talk about that. When Envy and Charlamagne talk about stuff, you're our main gal. Loren is our news gal. So Loren could have been the news person who comes in and out. And I think that would have been totally fine. And I think that would have worked because then everybody knows what roles they are. I think the problem now is I don't think Jess knows what her role is. I think she feels like that Jess is trying to take her job. And I don't think that's the case. Like, this is not the case of decades ago when Deborah Norville was on the Today Show. And then I think she was on maternity leave or something like that. And then Katie Couric kind of angled and took that job away from her. Katie Couric comes across as like this sweet girl, but she's cutthroat, man. Katie, don't trust anybody named Katie. So I don't think that was Loren's thing. I don't think Loren was trying to take Jess's job. I think she probably just knows the chemistry she had with those guys. But a really good leader would have saw that and kind of worked that out. I'm not saying that Charlamagne and Envy aren't good leaders. I think Charlamagne is a good leader of sorts, but sometimes he's not serious enough at times. And I think Envy can be too serious at times. Because I really she's lucky. Because I really do think if this was Envy's show, I think Envy would have got rid of her. One thing that's funny is that he was telling her that don't screw them dudes. Don't listen to the commentators. They've been on my neck for 15 years. Yeah, rightfully so. Of anybody on the Breakfast Club, the only person they can't afford to lose is Charlamagne. And Envy should always give Charlamagne Christmas gifts and birthday cards every year. Because if Charlamagne ever left that show is done. You could lose Envy and you could find anybody to plug in to be Envy. You could grab Nick Cannon and put him on the Breakfast Club and it'll be just fine. And no offense to Envy, but it's almost like, you're not that essential. So when he's talking about, they've been on my neck for 15 years, they might have a point. They might have a point, Envy, but hey, man, shout out to him, man. He's been there for a long time with his beige rage, as Charlamagne would say. So I don't know how this is going to work long term. I think one solution that could happen is that I think Jess said in her video that some days she didn't show up because she just went to do stand-up gigs because she just didn't feel comfortable. So I think something they can do is kind of almost like the First Take thing where Jess can show up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, she could do her stand-up stuff. So she could do 3 days, and then Loren comes in Thursday or Friday. Or Jess could do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Loren comes in on Fridays, and Jess can do her comedy gigs on Friday and Saturday. I think eventually, it can work, maybe with all four, but they have to be creative, and they need to communicate, and they need to talk. So somebody's got to step up as a leader. Long term, I don't know if Jess Hilarious is going to be there long term. I think short term, I think she's fine. But I don't know if she's going to be there long term. I think she's going to leave like Yee did. But Yee was there forever. But that's the thing. I don't think they dislike Jess at all. I just think Loren's probably a better fit for the show. But you can't pay all these people. So somebody's going to have to get cut. So it's not going to be Charlamagne. It's not going to be Envy. It might be Jess. But what do you guys think about this? Was Jess right or Jess was wrong? Well, she probably talked too much on social media about it. But I'm like Charlamagne. It was probably great for business.